What is up, everybody? D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and what the heck? Today it is time to review the Super 7 Godzilla Minus One. Not the minus color, the actual Godzilla Minus One. Let's do it. So in case you didn't know, I have already reviewed the Super 7 Godzilla Minus One minus color figure. And if you watched my review of this bad boy, which you absolutely should, you'd know that I said I wasn't gonna get or review the original Super 7 Godzilla Minus One. I said that I wasn't able to afford it and I wasn't able to get it, and that is still the truth. What I didn't know is that it's because I've already bought him. I placed this pre-order in December of 2023 when I had more spare cash because I wasn't living on my own, and I totally forgot about that until he one day showed up in the mail, which means it's time to check this guy out. Hey, if you want to get your own Super 7 Godzilla figure, probably not this one because I don't know if it's still available, but they do have a current Super 7 Godzilla Minus One, the atomic charged version. You should use my link, super7.com/kingofkings1954, because it supports me directly. It's a good way to support this channel. Use the Super 7 code KingofKings1954 to support me and this channel, and get yourself a cool figure in the process. Based on every purchase you make, I do get a small commission from it, so it is a really helpful way to support the channel. As for this, not sponsored by Super 7, so I can say whatever I'd like about this figure, and just checking out the box, it's pretty cool. I really like the Super 7 Godzilla Minus One boxes. Here's of course Godzilla Minus One font, and then the logo right here, and you can see Godzilla in it, which looks really cool. I really like the white box, it just looks very pretty. I also like that they've added this Godzilla Minus One color around it. The border looks great. I think this is from the trailer and poster, it's the font that says like Japan post-war went from 0 to minus. And then the back of the box is just gorgeous with that incredible Godzilla Minus One logo with Godzilla inside. One of my faves that they've ever done. And then this side's nice and simplistic with a G-1. Window to look in on Godzilla from the top, window to look at him from the front, and then just some legal trademarks on the bottom. The inside of the box is pulled from the poster of Minus One. It's got some of the Godzilla rubble and colors around it, which is pretty sweet. And this is how Godzilla comes in the box. The tailpiece is not attached, you have to put that on yourself. Let's get the dude out. We got him out. He's out now. Dude's screaming head. And then dude's chatted up head in position that he comes out of the box with. I did not struggle as much to get him out of the box as I did with the minus color version, mostly because I was prepared for him this time. And I'm also prepared this time to go heat his butt up, because I need to go put the tail in. So I'll see you guys in a second, and I'm going to take your guys' tips and tricks. You guys told me how to unbend the spines, because they do come bent in the box. You've told me that if I heat the spines up with a blow dryer, the spines should return to their original positioning. So let's go give that a shot, and I'll see you guys on the other side. And we're back. It's time to review Godzilla from Super 7. So here's Super 7's Godzilla Minus One colored version. I've put the tail on. One of my goals is to increase the quality of these figure reviews over the next year or so that I can actually like film video of me holding the figure showing them off, especially because you guys were totally right. Heating the spines up with a heater worked. The spines went right back into position and it was incredibly satisfying to watch. So someday I'll have to show you guys that. But for now, here's the Godzilla. He just looks fantastic. I just think it's so great. Super 7, I think, absolutely killed it with the sculpt. This thing has so many wonderful details and looks so much like Godzilla in the film. There is so much that I absolutely just adore about this figure, and I think it looks wonderful. The sculpt itself nails the silhouette of Godzilla Minus One. He's got all the right sizes, all the right proportions, everything's looking great, the spines are looking great, the overall body of Godzilla is looking fantastic, and then there's a lot of really wonderful details throughout. I love the face for Godzilla. I think they have killed it with the face. They've done a really wonderful job capturing small details of Godzilla. They've got wonderful textures in there. I love the top of the head. I love how sharp the spines on the top of the head are. The roaring mouth is also wonderful. I love the membrane stretching between the lips. That looks great. The teeth on the roaring head I think actually look way cooler, and the tongue looks really fantastic as well. But I love the creepy smile the closed mouth face has as well. They've done a great job including textures on Godzilla's neck and into his chest. The chest looks wonderful. They've nailed the minus Minus One chest, one of my favorite pieces of the Minus One design. Godzilla's shoulders capture that layered aesthetic just perfectly. I think the forearms look really good, as well as the giant elbow spikes look awesome, and the hands have really great layering as well, just like in the movie. The legs look really incredible with great detail, great texture, great depth. Those are looking fantastic, as well as the feet. Oh, they've nailed the feet. They are huge, they're imposing, they've got all the texture and layers you'd want. The tail piece itself is looking great with lots of deep grooves running throughout it, showing off Godzilla's wonderful design. The spines themselves having layered texturing as well is just wonderful, and I'm loving it so much. And then, as I mentioned with the Godzilla Minus Color review, there are quite a few areas on here where they have smoothed out the design a decent amount, but I will excuse that. The upper part of Godzilla's shoulder through the side there is a little smooth, as well as the side of Godzilla pretty much overall. All across the sides of his stomach here and getting into the tail piece here, it is rather smooth compared to the rest of the body where you've got much deeper grooves. There is a little bit of that going on the middle arm here as well as some areas like the middle leg has some of that going on. Now, the reason I excuse it is because I completely understand it, and it's because if you know anything about the SH MonsterArts Godzilla Minus One, you know that it's kind of like walking on eggshells moving that thing. Well, this thing, I've got no fears wobbling him around and moving him around. I can twist him. He does have a little crack to him when I twist him. Oh, I took him in half right here. If you're wondering how he operates, it's a big ball joint and it goes back on super easy. It's so that you can get him to look down super far, look up really high, shift side to side across his torso, and then so you can move the legs around without too much fear, so you can move the arms around without too much fear. And in order to accomplish that, they do need to smooth out some of the areas on this figure, because they know, for instance, if you're having Godzilla walk and you're bringing his leg back, right here, the figure can bump up against itself. So rather than smoothing out the feet, they've smoothed out this part of the tail just to allow for the ranged articulation. Other than that, Godzilla's got the textures and the design down perfectly from the model. It's so beautiful. And because I now have both the Godzilla Minus Color and the Godzilla Minus One, I was able to... I'll talk about that in a second. I was able to swap the head back out on the Godzilla Minus Color for the closed mouth head because I thought the Minus Color closed mouth head was a little cooler, which means I can swap the head on my Minus One to the roaring head because I think the roaring head on the colored version is cooler than the closed mouth head. I like the closed mouth head on my Minus Color a little more, and that I liked the open mouth head on my Minus One a little more because it gives me a great excuse to utilize both heads. Now, as you can see, I am able to pop the torso off my Minus One actually rather easily, and I'm not really able to pop the torso off my Minus Color all that easily, which I don't think is the biggest issue, mostly because I don't think it's going to be an issue I run into all that much. One thing that is an issue about the sculpt or whatever of this thing, maybe it's a sculpt issue, maybe it's an articulation issue, the tail, no matter what I do, I've heated it up, I've let it cool, I let it sit for an hour, it just comes off and on now. It just doesn't hold very well. And I know that this isn't just my Minus One issue because my Minus Color has been having this issue for months, ever since I got the Minus Color. If I move it even a little bit, that tail just pops off. It goes in really easy as well, and it's not like it falls off like just by this alone, but if you're supporting the figure by the tail at all, or if you're moving it around trying to repose it, that tail piece pops off over and over again, and I do find that really frustrating. The paint job on this thing is actually pretty freaking cool. It's not as intricate as the prototype version or the model or whatever it is on their website where they're showing the demos of this figure. It is not as detailed as that one. That one does have a better range of browns, especially in areas like right here on the legs. Right here on the legs, it looks like the Minus Color figure. There's like no color detail whatsoever. It is a dark gray, but on their website, you can see like there is more painting there. The browns could have been utilized in more areas. That being said, Godzilla is a base gray, which looks fantastic. They've done a very good job matching the base gray of Godzilla to the color he is in the movie. And then going across his full body, the browns they've picked actually look really great as well. I've seen some figures have this more saturated, some figures have it less saturated. I think they've picked a pretty good middle ground color. It is a pretty medium brown. It doesn't show up actually in this lighting on this camera as much as you would hope. I wonder how the B-roll will look, but it is actually a pretty solid brown they've picked for the body. They've done a good job adding it to the chest area. Godzilla's got it towards the lower legs and especially especially on the feet. They're looking great. He's got it on his shoulders, which looks awesome, and into the hands, which looks awesome. It's all up his neck, which I really like, and into the face, where it's all up the head, across the cheeks, including on his scar on his face, which looks awesome. It does a good job complementing the orange they've picked for his eyes. They did paint Godzilla's spines this color as well, which is really sweet, and it runs down through the tip of the tail. But it's mostly like the underside of Godzilla is pure gray, and then rotating him over is where you start to introduce color on the back. I do think that they could have gone further with the coloring, which was my same complaint for the minus color, actually, if you'll remember. I felt that the highlights and the shading, they could have gone further with it, but that I liked what is there. And that's kind of the same way I feel about this one. I really like what is here. I think it's actually a really, really solid paint job. I do wish it went just a little further in some areas though. But on the whole, I actually think it looks great. As for articulation, if I'm remembering from the last time, I believe there's about 25 points of articulation on this guy, and it's great. His tail can't do as much as I would have loved, but there's a lot of points throughout the tail to let you do some arcs with it, to let you pose it. It doesn't have the range of motion I would hope. Like, this is as far as I can turn the tail right here. It can't turn and bend in anymore, but on the whole, it can hold those poses incredibly well. It can go up about that high, and it can go out about this long. You can bend it about this much, and then you can do anything in there, in that range. So if you want to bend and curve, which is typically how I display all my Godzilla figures with the tails bent and curved, that's what you can do. Can't get it up as high as he can in the movie, obviously, but you can try. You know, you can pivot it and try. That's about as good as you could probably get it, which is not the worst. I always love the tails like this, and one thing I really, really love about this is that the tail holds its pose. A lot of Godzilla figures, the tails don't always hold their poses. I particularly have that issue with MonsterVerse Godzillas. Do not hold their tail poses. The legs can kick out. You can actually rotate them all the way around if you're brave enough. I'm not really gonna. But the legs can kick out about that far. They can kick back about this far before you start to run into issues. The knees can bend. So this is the knee extended, and then there's the knee bent. And then you can actually do the same thing with the foot, where the foot can come in and extend out, which looks pretty good. And then the foot can also rotate all the way around on a ball joint. So you can position the foot however you're wanting. The torso piece here is my favorite point of articulation on this figure. It just allows for a really solid, really smooth range of motion for Godzilla. You can turn him as far as you want. Ugh, dude, this thing really drives me nuts. But you can turn Godzilla as much as you want, and it works really well. His arms can rotate all the way around. They can also extend outward and close inward. His elbows can extend as well and pull in. The hands can do the same, where you can bring them in or out if you desire. The neck itself is on another wonderful little swivel here, so much like with the torso, it can rock back and forth, which is fantastic. It can look down, and you can push it back up. And then the head is similar, where you can look down with the head, look back up with the head, turn side to side with the head, get Godzilla in all sorts of great positions. And overall, this is one of the Godzilla figures I own that holds its poses the best, and you can get him into some really fantastic battle positions. He looks great. I love displaying my minus color, and I'm so excited to be able to display the minus one as well. And most importantly, he's an incredibly sturdy figure, so you don't have to fear too much when you're putting him in those poses. As for our figure comparisons here he is next to the Bandai Godzilla Minus One, so it's a 6-inch figure versus an over 8-inch figure. You can see the Super 7 stands way taller and way more imposing. And I like the darkness of the Super 7 gray a lot more than the cartoony brightness of the Bandai, but I actually kind of like the saturation of the Bandai's brown tints across the chest more than the Super 7 one, because they do pop a little more. Although I think the Super 7 one is a little more movie accurate, which I appreciate. There they are. Fantastic different approaches to the same figure. I love it. This one I was rather excited about. Here is the Godzilla 1989 Light, Sound, and Music from SH MonsterArts. And you can see these figures are in about the same scale. The minus one is a much more imposing figure, but I really like this because you can see the direct lineage from Godzilla 89 to Godzilla Minus One, and you can see how one inspired the other. I just think that's really epic, and I was very excited when I thought to pair these guys together, so I'm very glad to see that they do stack up incredibly well next to each other. Even though they are from two different rival figure companies, I actually think they look great together, and I think that this is a wonderful pairing. Here's the Super 7 Godzilla Minus One against the Super 7 Godzilla Minus Color. Same size, same stature, same sculpt, everything's the same except the paint, and they are really complementary figures. I wish the Super 7 colored version popped a little more and was a little more aggressively in color compared to the Minus color, but I understand that Godzilla Minus One's skin overall is a pretty dark gray, and so they are gonna look fairly similar. But there are some areas on here where you like compare the thighs next to each other, and it gets a little tricky to tell which is which if you don't know what you're looking at. But there they are next to each other, wonderful companion figures to one another. I'm so glad to have both. I'm so excited that I can do this now. I was so hopeful to get the Super 7 Godzilla in color, and I'm so glad I was able to. And there's the dudes. Finally, and I don't have to spend as much time on this as I did in my minus color review because I kind of already went over this comparison, but here is the SH MonsterArts Godzilla Minus One against the Super 7 Godzilla Minus One, and you can see the SH MonsterArts one is so much smaller. It is just over 6 inches. It's 6.3 inches versus a figure over 8 inches tall. So the Super 7 one is a lot more imposing. It's a lot more aggressive. It's also a lot sturdier of a figure. I think MonsterArts does outshine the Super 7 in terms of paint job. I think the MonsterArts one has a lot more attention to detail into the paint. You can see that they have included those brown highlights throughout more of the figure than they have on the Super 7. While there are some areas where I think that the Super 7's face makes a much more striking impression and looks a little better from afar, I do think the Minus One, especially around the eyes, looks a little better when you get really up close to it. I also think the SHMA one, which I think I keep calling the Minus One, I also think the SH one looks a little better in the spine region as well. Super 7 I do think has a better silhouette overall than the SH MonsterArts one, especially given the size of the figure. While MonsterArts does outclass Super 7 in terms of articulation, it is very scary and kind of a pain to make your SH figure articulate. The Super 7 one, it is not a pain at all. As I've demonstrated, he is a very easy figure to work with, and overall in terms of stability, it is a much more sturdy figure. Most importantly, when you're comparing these guys, you have to factor in the price. The Super 7 Godzilla Minus One was $85. It's a larger figure, a sturdier figure, one that from afar has a more striking impression. And the SH MonsterArts one was a $150 figure, nearly double the price of the Super 7 figure. And at the end of the day, I have the same conclusion I had in my original minus color review. I think the MonsterArts figure, for me, is the better figure. I like the MonsterArts one a little more because it has that extra range of motion. It has that extra articulation. It has that extra depth up close. But the Super 7 Godzilla Minus One is the superior figure overall. It is the one I would recommend overall. Well, for me, as a person who loves MonsterArts and has collected MonsterArts for nearly 10 years, I'm very happy with my MonsterArts. I think the Super 7 figure is more worth it. The price is better. You do kind of feel like you're getting more bang for your buck, especially in terms of size. It's still a good paint job. The articulation is much more easy to work with. It's a sturdier figure. It feels more quality, even though this one I do think is the higher quality of the two. This one feels like the quality that you're paying for is what you get. And this one, I don't know if I would agree with that. I think that this figure needed a little bit more reworking to make it a little less dangerous. So the Super 7 Godzilla Minus One, overall, I think it's a really wonderfully sculpted figure. I think the paint job looks very good. While I do think that there's some areas they should have gone further with, I think overall it looks very good. The articulation is fantastic. I think it's got a great range of motion. It's such a nice, large, sturdy figure. I also love that about it. My honest biggest issue with this stupid dude is his tail popping off. I can't stand that. And also, I don't know what's up with mine, but his torso is loosey-goosey, and it obviously pops off fairly easy as I've shown. I don't know why. I don't know if that's an issue anybody else is having with theirs, or if that's just something goofy with mine. But overall, I really like the Super 7 Godzilla Minus One. I'm so glad to have it. I'm very excited about it, and I'm happy to give this figure a 9 out of 10. I think that there's some areas that there could have been improvement, but on the whole, I think they've done a very good job with this figure. I'm very happy with it, and I do recommend it. I absolutely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of Minus One like myself. So go check this guy out. He's pretty sweet. Do you have the Super 7 Godzilla Minus One, or do you have any of the Super 7 Godzilla Minus Ones? I'd love to hear. Comment below and let me know. What do you think of it if you do? As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It's because of the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to review figures like this in the first place for you guys. Without them, I wouldn't be able to. So big thank you to the patrons over on Patreon. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man, out.